Hey everyone, Andrew here. So, about a year ago, I went to Walt Disney World for a couple days. I went and hit all of the parks and even a couple of the Universal ones. And I'd done this trip a couple times over the years. When I got home, I talked to a couple of my friends, and one of my friends was like, "Oh yeah, I should really go do Walt Disney World. I've never done it." And she works for Disney, so she has free tickets if she goes to Walt Disney World. She's like, "Well, do you have any recommendations, or like what parks we should do and what rides we should do?" And I'm like, I can whip something up. So I basically spent like an hour and I wrote down this huge page document where I talked about all four of the parks and the two Universal parks, and I was like, here are the rides to do, here are the rides to skip. These are my thoughts on the park overall. Is this worth your time? Things of that nature. And I gave that to her, and she was very appreciative of it. And then a couple days later, was talking to another one of my friends about the trip, and she's like, "Oh yeah, me and my husband and my kids are planning to go sometime next year." And I'm like, "Oh." And it's like, "Have you been?" "No." It's like, "Oh, do you want some recommendations?" And they're like, "Yeah, okay." And I gave her the list as well. And I was just thinking about it and going through it, and I'm like, there's probably a lot of people that have never done the parks before or haven't done them a lot and have, these generic questions or these thoughts and want to know which rides are good, which rides are worth the wait, which ones are just worth skipping. And so I decided I would do basically a beginner's guide to the Disney parks. And if you guys like this, maybe I'll do the Universal parks as well. I'm not going to say I'm the expert on this. I have not been on every single ride at every single park. I will say for the West Coast side, I have done all of the rides at least once. Whereas like the East Coast side, there's a couple that I just have not gotten to yet. But I've been to the Disneyland park pretty much every year since I was born. My mom started taking me as a baby. And I didn't grow up in California. I do live in California now, but I did not grow up in here. I grew up in Seattle, and we would fly down every year and we would do Disney. And I love it, and I love the parks, and I love what Disney brings to them. But there are definitely things that are worth your time and things that are definitely not worth the time. So I'm going to go over each of the parks over time. I'm going to do a video focusing on each of them and go through each of the lands, each of the rides, if there's any restaurants or anything that I think is worth mentioning, and just give you my overall thoughts of the parks in general. And it's just my thoughts mixed with like what I know other people think of the ride, because there's certain rides that are in these parks where it's like I never want to do that again, but I know other people that love it, so I will do my best to incorporate that thinking into it and let you know why other people like it. So today I will be starting with the West Coast side of Disneyland side. So the Disneyland park is the original park. It is the first one built by Walt Disney himself. It is on the smaller side as far as the parks go in comparison to the Walt Disney World side. Literally the entirety of Disneyland fits into Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom's parking lot. But the way that I've always seen it and the way I describe it to people that ask like what's the difference between the Disneyland side and the Disney World side is Disneyland is your grandparents' house. It's on the smaller side, it's a little bit cluttered, but it has this feeling of warmth and friendliness and kindness to it. You feel kind of like you're at home there. Disney World is like your rich aunt and uncle's house. It's big, there's a lot to do, there's a whole bunch of new technology and different things, but it's a little bit colder and a little less friendly. Now, there's people that will disagree with that and say Disney World is way better. I get that. I found in my experience that going to the Disney World side, there's always little things that can go wrong that just make that trip a little bit less enjoyable. Whereas Disneyland side, even if things go wrong, there's so much life and energy into it that I can usually forget about that and just remember all the good and fun stuff about it. Before I get into the parks and talk about things that you should know as a first-time guest if you've never been, I'm not going to be able to tell you like prices and the days to go and things like that. I will say if you are going late in the day, like if you're not going like first thing when it opens at 7 in the morning, if you're going a little bit later, get the app, check the wait times, check Space Mountain and Indiana Jones specifically, because those ones are the judge to see how busy the park is. If either of those are over an hour and a half, the park is too busy, don't go that day. Like that means everything is going to be super long waits. If you are parking in one of the parking structures or anything, make sure to write down where you parked, which level, which floor, which spot. Take a picture, do whatever you need to do to remember, because it is super easy to forget. My mom and me used to count count how many spaces we were from a specific post with a specific sign, so we never lost our car. We lost a lot of money in the parking lot one year. My mom lost like $200 or something in 5 minutes of the park, but yeah. Now, as for Disneyland itself, we start out at the front of the park, which is Main Street, USA, which has no rides, so we'll be able to get through this part fairly quickly. The only thing here, ride-wise, is the train, which is honestly was the smartest decision in the design in the entire park. It goes around the entire park. You have multiple spots that you can get onto the train, and it'll take you back to the front entrance. It is really great design. Like, the fact that they didn't put something like this in every single Disney park drives me nuts. Because when you get to, like, Epcot and how big Epcot is, and you get all the way to the back, and then you realize, oh, crud, I have to walk all the way to the front, and there's no method to get back to the front quickly. I don't know why they didn't put the train in every single park, or some variation of it. So yeah, the train is a great design. I'm not going to give this one a rating. By the way, I will be rating all of the rides. I will be giving them a 1 to 5 rating, 1 being bad, 5 being amazing. I can tell you right now, the Disneyland side, there's going to be maybe not a lot that I would give that. They're usually just like walkthroughs and not actual rides. We have a couple different little vehicles and stuff that'll take you from the front entrance to the castle. You have the omnibus, you have a trolley being pulled by horses, you have a fire engine. These are all fine, but, they don't work the whole entire day, so they're not necessarily a ride. They're just a quicker way from the front to the middle of the park. Food-wise, down here you have Carnation Cafe, which is a lovely table service restaurant. They do really good breakfast foods, like Mickey-shaped waffles. If you go in for lunch, they got a fried pickle that's pretty good. It's okay. It's not one of my top favorites, but it is one that is worth taking a look at. You have Gibson Girls Ice Cream Parlor, which is a really solid ice cream parlor. You have the Refreshment Corner, which is hot dogs and chili. It's really good if you're in a hurry type of thing. You have the Jolly Holiday Bakery, which is a basic bakery with sandwiches and treats and things like that. It's okay. It's not amazing. You have the Little Red Dragon, which specializes in doing hand-dipped corn dogs, which always has a really long line for it, and I never understand why. Like, honestly, their corn dogs are way too bready and just aren't really worth it for me, but there's people I know that absolutely love it, and they want to do it every single time. If you're even considering it, though, use the mobile order with the app. Makes things a lot faster and easier. You have the Market House, which is basically Starbucks, if you need your coffee fix. Then there is the Plaza Inn, which is a lovely little cafeteria-style food. You pick out what you want and you go sit. They have character meet and greets in the morning. It's fun. It's solid. The food is okay, but not something I'd go out of my way for. Starting off to the left, we have Adventureland. First thing you see on the way in is the Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. This is a really nice little throwback show to like the old school Disney way, where you have animatronic birds and flowers and statues singing to you. It's a really fun little show in a nice air-conditioned building. It's a great way to kill some time. Solid 3 out of 5. Like, it's worth you try a look-see if you haven't done it. And it's just a nice place to sit and relax. You have the Jungle Cruise, which you get on a boat and you get taken down the river by a skipper who tells really bad jokes for the entire time. Your enjoyment of this ride will depend entirely on how good the skipper is. If they are hilarious, you're going to have a blast. If they are awful, it's going to be a dreadful slog. It's one of those where I don't recommend doing it if there is a long line, because it's just kind of okay. There's also a Jingle Cruise, which is the Christmas version, where they tell really bad Christmas jokes the entire time. I honestly think the Jingle Cruise is worse because the jokes are a lot more stiff and a lot more predetermined. There's no letting the skipper's actual personality come out as much in that version. Overall, it's a solid 2.5 out of 5. It's very middle of the road. Some days it's going to be a 4, some days it's going to be a 1. You have the Indiana Jones Adventure, which is this really fun roller coaster like ride where you're in a Jeep that just jerks and shakes and moves all around in full 360, directions. It's really fun, it's really creative, but it's also really jerky and can really hurt your body. It also has an extremely long line every day, and the minimum it usually ever is like 45 minutes to upwards of 2 hours. The When you get into the Jeep, if you get the driver's seat of the Jeep, there's this big wheel that does nothing. It doesn't spin or anything. It's just there for the sake of being there. And it's like, I was so disappointed when I finally got to be in the driver's seat and the wheel didn't even turn. I'm like, are you kidding me? And is also a ride that tends to break down periodically throughout the day. I do recommend, though, they have a single rider line. You can usually cut the time in half by doing the single rider. However, with the single rider, you will be sat in one of the back corners, which is where it's the most jerky. But I would rather risk that and then wait the hour and a half to get on the ride just to be sat in that spot anyway. But it is a solid fun ride that I do recommend, a solid 4 out of 5. They just shut down Tarzan's Treehouse and are now retheming it into more of a back to closer to what it used to be when it was the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse, which is weird that they're going backwards on that, but based off the two other versions of what this ride was, most likely what it's going to be is it's just going to be a walkthrough ride. You enter, you go up these stairs, and you walk around, and you see these different images, and then you come back down the stairs. It's a 1 out of 5. It's a really good thing to send your kid on if they are hyper and energetic. My mom used to go to the entrance, send me up, and then she'd just stand by between the entrance and the exit just to keep an eye on me to see where I came down, and she'd just let me run all over the top of there until I was tired. So, and I was a little butt back then. I would come down the entrance side and then take off. So yeah, I put my mom through the ringer at Disneyland, and she still kept bringing me. So a couple different little eateries in this area. You have the Tiki Juice Bar, as well as the Tropical Hideaway, both of which sell the Dole Whip, which is really worth it. It's a pineapple soft serve, basically, but it's got a really nice flavor, and it's legitimately one of the best desserts in the entire resort. With the Tropical Hideaway, you get multiple flavors. They have a watermelon and a pineapple and another one, but that one always has a line because there is no way to order it ahead of time through the app. So expect to wait to get that. If you are looking at the Tiki Bar where they have the original Dole Whip, I would check both sides of it, because there's two sides to it. There's the one side that's by the main walkway, and then there's the other side that's in the waiting area for the Enchanted Tiki Room. If that side has a cashier, that's the side to go on, because it usually doesn't have much of a line. But, sometimes there's no cashier on that side, so you have to wait in the longer line. The Bengal Barbecue, which is just meat on a stick, it's solid. It's okay if you want a quick snack, but not amazing. Moving on to Frontierland. So the big ride here is Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, which is a really good, fun roller coaster. You're basically on a runaway train. It's got some dips, some dives, very fast speeds, whipping and turning. It is a really fun, quick roller coaster. No real corkscrews or anything loop-wise. It's just really fun and fast, and it's just a blast to ride on. One of my favorite experiences, I rode on this at night just as the fireworks started to go off, so just every once in a while the area would get lit up by fireworks going off. It was legitimately one of my favorite experiences of all time. Just beautiful. I could probably never time it that well again. That was pure luck, but it worked out really well. Honestly, super fun roller coaster. A little simple, but between the storytelling and the creativity and the stuff that's going on there, it's a solid 4.5 out of 5. It's fun, and it's usually not a super long wait. Otherwise, the only other really rides you have in here are you have the Mark Twain riverboat, as well as the sailing ship Columbus. These are both ships that basically go around the rivers of America. If you're on the sailing ship Columbus, it's just a pirate ship that you get to ride on. There's no story or anything of real note or interest. It's just something to kill time with. That one's a 1 out of 5. If you're on the Mark Twain, that one at least has a little bit of a story, has some talking points, gives you a little bit of the history of riding up and down the Mississippi in a riverboat type of thing. It's okay. It's a 2 out of 5. The only negative I have with it is there's not a lot of spots to sit down, so you really are primarily sanding for most of it. It's okay, but it's not something to go out of your way for. There's also a little shooting gallery if you want to do that, but Tom Sawyer's Island, where you basically take a little raft and travel across the rivers to the Tom Sawyer's Island. There's not much on the island anymore. They closed down the fort that used to be there, and now there's just this little pirate cave that you go in and out of. It's all a 1 out of 5. Like, it's a good thing to take your kid if they have a lot of energy and you just want them to burn off some of that, but it's not something to go out of your way for. Food-wise, you have Riverbell Terrace, which does really good barbecue food. The service from there is a little bit iffy from what I've heard, but like the food quality has been pretty decent from what I've had. The Stage Door Cafe, where you can fried chicken and sandwiches and stuff, is almost never really a super long wait at this one. The Golden Horseshoe used to be one of the best places to eat and had a really great show in it. Now the shows are just a little bit less interesting and the food has gone down a little bit in quality. Rancho de la Cola, which is it's basically the only Mexican restaurant in the entire Disneyland side. It's solid, but it's not amazing. Moving on to New Orleans Square, we have Pirates of the Caribbean, which is this lovely boat ride that you get in and you go through this dark bayou-like area at the beginning with this huge restaurant off to the side, which I will talk about in a moment. Fun little boat ride that even when there's a long line for it, it goes by super fast. Like, it varies on the day. Like, there's some days you'll go there and that ride is like 5-minute wait, and then there's other days where it's like an hour-long wait. But honestly, even if it's an hour long, it's one of those ones where I'm like, it's kind of worth it. It's just this really fun boat ride. It's all in the dark. It's nice and air conditioned. You get these 2 big drops right at the beginning to give you some excitement, but then you get to the actual story side of it, and that stuff is all really interesting and creative. Like, it legitimately was my favorite as a kid. Like, I would ride this like 3 times every time we went because I enjoyed it so much. But it has changed a bit over the years. They keep making it more PC and working on, cutting out as much of the bad stuff as they could. Literally in my lifetime, I watched it go from the pirates chasing the women to the pirates chasing the women to steal objects for them to the women chasing the men because they are stealing objects from the house. And I watched Red go from a woman being sold at auction to be a bride to being a pirate selling off rum. These are all like odd things that I don't necessarily feel like Disney had to do them, but I get why they did them, and they don't really hurt the rides. And honestly, the animatronic for Red is actually really impressive. The thing that hurt the ride for a long time was how much they made it like the films. Like the fact that Jack Sparrow was in so much of the ride, and then they also had like Davy Jones at the beginning, and it was too much, and they were not taking good care of that ride for a while. Now it's cut out a lot of that stuff. There's still Jack Sparrow in the ride, but he's now just a part of it more than it being shoved into the story. And they fixed a lot of the stuff that I missed about the older versions of the ride. So it's gone a lot better. I give this one a solid 5 out of 5. Is legitimately a great ride to take yourself and your kids and your family and everybody on. You also have the Haunted Mansion, which is another great 5 out of 5 ride for me. It's such great theming, such great storytelling. It's got the stretching room and the doom buggies. Plus, during the Christmas time, that gets taken over by the characters from Nightmare Before Christmas and becomes this whole different kind of ride. Is super fun, super entertaining. The one thing that always kind of I don't like about it is that they switched out the old Heartbeat Bride for the new Axe Bride in the attic, and I don't like the Axe Bride as much. I thought the Heartbeat Bride was so much more creepy and more interesting. One of the things I will recommend if you have a little one, this guide is on the scary side. The way I got through it as a kid and the way I would recommend is show your kid Ghostbusters before you take them to this park. Any of the Ghostbusters. You can even do one of the more PG, family-friendly Ghostbuster films. And then when you go and take them on the ride, give them like a stick or a flashlight or something and tell them that this is a Ghostbuster thing and that they are going to help catch ghosts. And it just makes the ride so much more fun for them. I used to do that all the time as a kid. It was a blast. I also recommend, even as an adult, after the stretching room, when all the lights go out and it goes quiet, if you just start maniacally laughing at the top of your lungs, it is the funniest, creepiest thing because it just puts everyone on edge, and it's so much fun. I love doing that. Honestly, 5 out of 5, one of my favorites. Food-wise, honestly, New Orleans has some of the best food in the entire resort. It's got some really great stuff to it. You have the Royal Street Veranda, which is gumbo and clam chowder in a bread bowl. I recommend the clam chowder. Unfortunately, the gumbo's gotten a bit on the very spicy side. This used to be like my favorite place to eat, and I don't eat there anymore because it's gotten too spicy. They also just opened up Tiana's place, which took over the French market, and they have 3 different types of gumbo and a bunch of different options. I've only gotten to dine there once. I was not very impressed, but based off of what they used to be, and I know it's the same kind of people behind it, French Market used to be one of the better quick service cafeteria style places, and I do think Tiana's is still going to be kind of that. You also have 2 of the best sit-down restaurants in the entire place. You have the Cafe Orleans, which is right out by the water. You get to see this lovely view, and it has some of the best food in the entire resort. It has the Monte Cristo, which I call the deep fried happiness. It is basically a turkey ham and Swiss cheese sandwich, deep fried to golden perfection and topped with powdered sugar. It comes with side of raspberry sauce. It is heavenly. It is the heaviest thing you're ever going to eat in your life, but it is so good and so filling. They also do a chicken and sausage gumbo, which they share with the Bayou, which I'll talk about in a moment. But it is legitimately my favorite thing in the entire resort. This gumbo I first found it like 10 years ago, and every time I've had it since then has been perfect. Just this perfect level of flavoring and seasoning and spices. It's got a kick, but it's not overpowering. Like literally when I first went to the parks after lockdown, the first thing I went and got that soup because I love that soup so much. And then you got to do it from Cafe Orleans. Blue Bayou only serves it as a cup. Cafe Orleans, you can ask for it in a bowl. They usually also have really good desserts. I honestly recommend them. There's also, like I said, the Blue Bayou restaurant, which is that restaurant you see at the start of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. It's got a really great atmosphere, but it is very hard to get into. They are reservation only. They make reservations up to 2 months in advance. They usually probably sell out about 2 months in advance. I recommend making those reservations for that as soon as you can because they don't take a lot of walk-ins. It is got some of the best food. It's got some of the best atmosphere. It is all in the dark, so I definitely recommend looking at the menu before you get into the restaurant. And it has alcohol, which is good. Like all the table service restaurants now have alcohol, which I don't particularly love, but I understand why they did it. Want to say, don't get the dessert from them. It is not worth it. Instead, you should go to the Mint Julep Bar. Mint Julep Bar is right next to Tiana's place. They do beignets, the basically French donuts that are hollow with a dipping sauce. Those are amazing. Actually best dessert in the entire resort. Better than Dole Whip, better than anything. Worth your time to go and get some of that from the Mint Julep Bar. Recommend using the app ahead of time because Mint Julep Bar usually has a really long line. Going on to Critter Country. Now, Critter Country right now has 2 rides. Splash Mountain is currently closed as it is being changed into Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I don't particularly like the fact that they're changing Splash Mountain into that, but it's happening. There's nothing we could do about it at this point. I haven't gotten to ride it, of course, because it's still being in the mix of being done right now, but based off what I'm pretty sure they're going to keep the same old track and the same boats and some of the same stuff. So based off what the old ride was, it's a really good log ride. You have a really high chance of getting wet on it, especially if you're in the more towards the front, and if you're a bigger person like I am. It is usually a really long wait. It's really good to go on though when it's the summer. I do not recommend getting in the single rider line, because the one time I did, we were waiting there longer than people that actually got in the line, because instead of pulling from the single rider line when there were gaps, they would go down the line and find people that were, smaller parties. So we got stuck waiting like 45 minutes plus to get on when we were like third in line at the single rider line. So yeah, it's not worth it for that one, but overall I give that ride a solid 4 out of 5. It's not one I go on very often, but I always enjoy it when I do. It's got 3 really good drops in it. The Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, which is a solid enough dark ride where you get to go with Pooh and Tigger and Piglet through their adventures. It's fine. It has a good story. It has some nice imagery. I can't particularly love this one because its existence means they got rid of the Country Bear show, which was legitimately my favorite thing in the entire resort when it was there. Like, it was my go-to as a kid. Like, I watched that show so many times. Like, me and my mom would sit and watch that show like 3 times before we would leave and go do other things in the park, because it was a nice big space. It was air conditioned. It had a really good show, and they didn't kick you out at the end of the show. They just let you stay and watch the next one. You know, so you didn't have to go back and rejoin a line. You could just watch 3 shows and then leave. I really missed that one, and it makes the Winnie the Pooh ride more disappointing for me. Overall, though, Winnie the Pooh is a solid 2.5, taking out my own feelings about it destroying Country Bear. It's not one that I go out of my way for ever. You then also have the Davy Crockett Explorer canoes, which is just you paddling around a canoe with a bunch of other people around the river. It's kind of dependent on who you're with and who's running the boat. I've only done it 2 or 3 times, and the last time the guy just kept yelling at us for not doing well. And I got really badly sunburned. So yeah, I don't want to do that again. This is a 1.5 out of 5. Food-wise, they have the Harbor Galley, which has really good soup and a bread bowl. Like, they do a broccoli cheddar, which is amazing. They also do a lobster roll, which is really nice. There's also the Hungry Bear restaurant. That one does burgers and fries. They have some really good fries over there, but that's about it. Up north, we have Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which has 2 rides. First one being Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. Now, this is a very Star Tours-esque ride, but you are now in the Millennium Falcon, controlling it, driving it, or doing all these different roles. It's really good and really interesting. Like, it's a lot better than what Star Tours is, which we will get to. You get in the line, you get through all of the queue, you get to the waiting area, and you're inside the Millennium Falcon's main waiting area where they played the chess and all that stuff, and you're given one of 3 jobs to do for the ship. You are either the pilot, who literally fly the ships via an up and down controller or a left and right controller based on which side of the ship you're on, and that is the hardest position to do any of the stuff in, because it never works the way you want. Like, I've piloted it 2 or 3 times, and every single time it's been like really rough. Like, most of the time, my groups succeed unless I'm the pilot. If I'm piloting, we're gonna lose one of the 2 goals we're going after, because I don't think I'm that bad at it. It's just it feels counterintuitive. I cannot wrap my brain around it very well. You also have a gunner position, which is second, which is literally you pressing a button over and over and over again to fire the weapons. It's fun, it's easy, it gives you something to do. You have the engineering one, which is in the back, which is this really nice way to experience and view the ride. Basically, to your left, it's going to be a whole bunch of buttons. Anytime one lights up, you press it. It's all really fun, really interesting. Every ride feels a bit differently because you have different pilots and different crews, and everything can go a little bit different. It is annoying that it is the same mission over and over and over again. Like, they need to add a couple more variants of that mission, but it's still a fun blast. You get to really feel like you're in that cockpit and you're flying the Falcon and you're doing that stuff. Solid 5 out of 5. Legitimately amazing. You also have Rise of the Resistance, which this ride is perfection from top to bottom. Like, the storytelling, the queue, every single aspect of it. The fact that you start out as part of the Resistance, you load up onto a transport to go join and fight with the Resistance. You get captured by the First Order. You get taken onto a First Order ship, put in a prison cell, get threatened by Kylo Ren. Then the Resistance helps you break out, and then you ride on these Indiana Jones-esque pods that are not as herky-jerky. They're actually really smooth and really fun ride. Like, just this ride is just perfection from beginning to end. It's got such good storytelling, such great stuff. The negatives would be that it's like the ride itself, it takes a while. Just even once you get to the actual front of the line, it takes a while. It's like a good 10 minutes build up just to get to the part where you're actually in the ride part of the ride. Then it also always has an extremely long line. This is one of the only rides where I'm like, paying more to get the Lightning Pass makes sense to me, because this is usually an hour and a half or more line. They charge the most for the Lightning Lane for that one of all the rides, and it's the only one that I could justify really doing it with. It is one of the only ones that I would say is worth waiting an hour plus for, but it is an extremely long line for that. And it is also a ride that breaks down really easily and quite often. So there's a good chance that you can get to the front of the line and then the ride just breaks. It has these things that can go wrong with it, but overall it is this like exceptional work of art that is legitimately one of the best things I've ever been on in my life. Great storytelling, great effects, great everything from start to finish. Easily 5 out of 5. Honestly, could be a 6 out of 5. Like, it's that high quality. It's one where I'm like, if it's under an hour and a half wait, get in line. Like, it's worth it. Food-wise, over in the Star Wars Galaxy Edge, you have Ronto Rollers, which are basically hot dogs and naan bread. Skip the Ronto Roller regular and get the vegetarian one. That one is actually amazing. They have the Jockin Bay 7, which has really good sit-down food. A little bit of like steak and chicken and things like that. It's got some really nice options. It does a really good cold brew if you like your coffee. You have the Milk Bar, which has a blue and green milk. Not really worth it as far as I'm concerned. It has a couple stuff. I would say stay away from the green milk. It tastes like grass. Then you have Oga's Cantina, the only table service of this area, although it's more of a bar than it is a restaurant. And it has some really odd things about it that you have to really kind of know about beforehand. Couple things to know about that one before you're going in. It is got a couple booths to be sat in, but you have to have a reservation. If you do not have a reservation that you made 60 days in advance, because they sell out 60 days in advance, if you don't have that reservation, you're going to be standing, and there's no option to sit. So if you've got kids, those kids are going to have to stand with you or sit on the floor. Do not sit them on the tables. You will get yelled at. I've seen it happen multiple times. You have a 2-drink maximum and a 45-minute time limit. Both of these can be a little bit flexible depending on how busy and the server that you get. If your server tells you, oh no, there's a 2-drink max, there's a 2-drink max. Sometimes you might be able to talk them into a third, but not often. Your server can also be the nicest person you've met or the meanest person you've met, depending on the day. Because I know from talking to people and knowing about that, they are encouraged to be a little bit on the ruder, blunter side. Now, that was like back when it first opened, though. I know they've lightened up a lot more. It does not have much in the way of food, but it has really good pretzels and has a really great drinks. I recommend the Fuzzy Tauntaun and the Outer Rim if you have not tried. Stay away from the cold brew, though. That is disgusting. It's just gross. It is a really fun experience. I do recommend it if you've never done it. And honestly, if you don't have a good experience with it, I even recommend going back another time because you might get a different server and you might get a different feeling to it. But it is, it is one of those ones where it's like you might not have a great time with it if you're not willing to go with the flow and the energy that's in the room. Moving on to Fantasyland. So, Fantasyland is a whole bunch of dark rides for kids that are just really fun, really interesting. You have the Pinocchio dark ride, where you get to join Pinocchio on his adventures, solid 3 out of 5. You got the Snow White ride, which is another, pretty much the same as the Pinocchio ride, just get to go through Snow White's story from start to finish, solid 3 out of 5. You have Alice in Wonderland, which always has a little bit of a wait, but it's not usually as bad as one of the others in this area. It's not necessarily worth waiting a half hour or more, but it has some good stuff in it. It is a decent, fun ride, 3 out of 5. You have Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, which is my favorite of these dark rides in this area. It's like you get a nice vehicle, you get to control the wheel somewhat. At least the wheel actually spins, unlike the one in Indiana Jones. It's got some really good ideas and really good elements. You get hit by a train and go to hell. It's fun. Solid 4 out of 5. Like, it's easily the best of these dark rides. And then you have Peter Pan. And I will never understand the wait for Peter Pan, because Peter Pan is never less than half an hour wait. It's an okay dark ride. Like, you get on this pirate ship and you get floated above these sceneries, so you get to kind of fly through Neverland, which is alright, but it's never less than half an hour wait. And in the time that it takes you to wait to get onto this ride, you can do Snow White, Pinocchio, and Mr. Toad's Wild Ride all together. Like, I'd rather do all of those than do Peter Pan, and I just don't see anything in Peter Pan that makes it worth that wait. There's some people I know that love it. I don't think it's worth it. I give it a 2 out of 5. Like, and honestly, that's only because I know people love it. If it was me, I'd give this like a 1.5. Like, it's not really worth that effort. You have a walkthrough of Sleeping Beauty's castle, which is just a couple pictures from Sleeping Beauty. It's a 1. Casey Jr.'s circus train, where you travel up around the Storybrooke area and get to see all those sights. It's alright, but it's got some really uncomfortable seats. 2 out of 5. But it's got a really nice song to it. You get to hear the Casey Jr. song, which is fun. King Arthur's Carousel, which is just a carousel. You know, it's the same as carousel as everywhere else. 1 out of 5. It's fine. It's okay. You have Dumbo the Flying Elephant, where you get to control whether or not Dumbo is higher or lower. It's really good if you have little kids, but it usually has a really long ride, and if you're an adult, it's way too long a wait and too short of a ride. It's a 2 out of 5. You have the Storybook Canals. Basically, you get on a boat and you travel through these canals, and you get to see all these dioramas and these different art pieces, and you got a skipper that's telling you stories about it. This one can be really fun if you have a good skipper. It's not as dependent on the skipper's quality as, say, Jungle Cruise was, but it helps. I give it 2.5. Not worth it if it's like an hour plus wait, but it has its moments. You have the Mad Tea Party, where you get to sit in a teacup and spin it as fast as you want, and that is a blast. That is just, super fun. You can just try and make yourself as sick as possible. It is a fun, fast, creative. You get a lovely experience. 4.5 out of 5. You have the Matterhorn, which is a bobsled roller coaster, where I much prefer the new design, where you get your own individual seats versus the ability to double up seats. It's really good if you do the single rider, because you can get jumped to like the front of the line almost immediately. It's really fast. It's really fun. It is on the jerky side. You are going to be slammed to the sides a lot. It can really hurt your body. And if you're an older person, this is definitely not one to do. It hurts a bit. But it is a really fun ride with a really good animatronic of the Yeti. It's really fun, really interesting. 4.5 out of 5. Then you have It's a Small World ride, where you get on a slow-moving boat, travel through these areas of different parts of the world with them singing the It's a Small World song. It's fun. Definitely use the restroom before you get in line for this, because if you have to pee when you get in that ride, you're going to be holding it for a while. It's really fun, though. It's got some really good music. I really like picking out the different Disney characters that are hidden throughout the ride. Plus, they have a Christmas version where they do all Christmas songs, which is really fun. I love the building and the design of it. It's a solid 4 out of 5 for me. It's not one that I would wait an hour for, but like 30 minutes, yeah, sure. Like, it's fun. I enjoy it. Food-wise over here, you only really have a couple options. You have the Red Rose Tavern, which does flatbread pizzas and burgers. It's okay. Like, they do some good tater tots and have a good cold brew, but that's about it. And you have the Maurice's Treats, which is basically cinnamon twists and Parmesan twists and things like that. It's okay. It's not amazing. They added a whole area to this section where it's just a princess meet and greet area, and they'll do shows there on occasion. I haven't seen any of the shows in their entirety. It's something to do with your kid to pass time, but it's not something I'd recommend. Up into Mickey's ToonTown, we have brand new Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Rails, which is brand new. They just put it in this last year. It's a really fun dark ride where you start off on a train and the train breaks apart into different individual vehicles. They built it, basically it's almost an exact copy of the one that they have over in Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World. It has some good elements to it. I like the queue for it. It's a lot more interesting than the Disney World one. It's fun. It's okay. It's not one that I would wait an hour plus for, but it's a really fun little dark ride. 4 out of 5. Sorry. You have Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin, which is basically Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, but mixed with the Mad Tea Party, so you can spin the car as much as you want, trying to make yourself sick, with a story. It's fun, it's creative, it's interesting. I love seeing those characters. 4.5 out of 5. Just, it's a blast. It's one of those ones that can have a bit of a line, but even waiting in the queue for that one can be pretty fun. You have Gadget's Go Coaster, which is a really good little kids roller coaster. It's a really good starting roller coaster. It's quick and fast. It's 2 out of 5 for adults, but it's not one that you really need to go out of your way for. You have a Goofy's Playhouse, as well as like Chip and Dale's Treehouse, where there's little walk-in areas that kids can play in. 1 out of 5s, obviously. Not much to do if you're an adult at all, and just something to do if you have a rambunctious kid. Food-wise, all they have is Daisy's Diner. It's pizza. It's fine. It's not worth it, but it's okay. You also have a Minnie's house and Mickey's house, which are walkthroughs, and you can meet Mickey Mouse inside of his house, which is cool. It's a great place for your kids and stuff, but it's not something you need to go out of your way for unless they really want to meet Mickey Mouse. Finally, we have Tomorrowland. Starting off, we have the monorail, which takes you from Tomorrowland into downtown Disney. It gets you a really fast way in and out of the park, especially if you stay at the hotels. But it is a monorail. It's the same as the railroad. It doesn't get a rating. You have Finding Nemo's Submarine Voyage, which is basically the submarine ride that used to be 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but now you see Dory and Nemo and Marlin, and it's okay. It's a solid little boat ride. I get nauseated on it for some reason, which is weird because the ship never goes actually down, even though they make it look like it does. My one real negative with it, other than the nausea, is that the water is really clean now. It's as opposed to when it was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, so you can see the surface really easily. That does ruin the experience a little bit, but it's a solid 2 out of 5. Even the old version, was only ever maybe a 3 at most. It was never that amazing of a ride. You have Autopia, is basically kids get to drive a car, and that's it. And even as a kid, I was like, this is not as much fun as I would like it to be, because it's not like go-karts. It's not a thing that you can really move or control or anything. It's a track. You can spin the wheel a little bit, but all it's going to do is grind it against the track and slow you down. So you just have to time it right to turn when the track turns, and it's slow and boring. And even as a kid, I was like, this is not fun. It's a 1 out of 5. It's one, if you have a little kid, they might want to do it. But it's also one of those ones where I'm like, Disney, you can get rid of this track at any time you like and put in something better. And they just switched from gas to electric. It only took them 30-something years. Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters, which is a really fun little shooting gallery ride where you go through and you can control your little pod and shoot at targets. It's really fun, really good competition ride. It has some really fun stuff to it. I recommend, if you want to do a good score in it, look for Evil Emperor Zurg. He has a hidden little sigil in the middle of his chest. Aim for that as much as you can. You will get a lot of points that way. I just found that out, and it was funny because I've only ever beaten my mom one time at this, and I'm pretty sure that's how I did it. It's a solid 3.5 out of 5. Across the way, we have Star Tours, The Adventure Continues, and yeah. So Star Tours, the original, was one of my favorite things in the entire resort. It was always my number 3 after Pirates and Haunted. It was one of my favorites even as a kid. And I still, to this day, love that original story, love that original characters. I love Captain Rex, the pilot, and his personality. I'm so happy he got put into Oga's Cantina as the DJ and that he gets to exist in some kind. So when they reimagined it and they're like, okay, we're going to do it and include the prequels and the new series that we now own and throw those in as new areas you can go in, and we're going to add 3D glasses to make it more interactive, I was really excited. And I hate it. I truly do not like this version of Star Tours. Every single time I've been on it has been the worst. It's so jerky and rough and uncomfortable. The last time I went with my ex, who was a hardcore roller coaster girl. She was a Six Flags every single ride kind of girl. And I'm not. Six Flags terrifies me. I can't do those kind of giant roller coasters. When we get to the Disney World side, there's roller coasters I'm not going to be able to talk about because I've never been on them because I'm scared. I did not ride like all of the roller coasters in Disneyland until I was in my 20s. Like I was really scared, and those are all really lightweight compared to, you know, anything at Six Flags. She when she went on this went, this was horrible. I'm so nauseated and so from it. I don't know if it's just the jerkiness of the ride or the 3D glasses mixed in. I don't particularly love C-3PO being the pilot as much. I don't think he's that interesting as the pilot. And each of the scenes don't feel interesting or unique or real. It just feels cut together and badly paced, and it's a 1 out of 5 for me. It is so unpleasant and unfun to ride. I know there's other people that still like it and still would give it some praise, but this went from being one of my favorite things in the entire resort to being the ride I don't want to go on ever. Maybe in a couple years I'll go on it again and it'll be much better than it was, but I haven't been on it in like 4 years because I don't want to throw up and be nauseated for the entire day. You also have Astro Orbiters, which is basically Dumbo the Flying Elephant, but instead you're riding on a rocket. It's okay if you have a little kid, but it's usually got a bit of a wait, and the ride is like 4 seconds long. It's a 1.5 out of 5. Like, it's less interesting and good than Dumbo, because at least with Dumbo, you're riding on Dumbo versus just a generic rocket shape. Finally, we have Space Mountain, which is legitimately my favorite thing in the entire resort. It's an in-the-dark roller coaster with a lot of dips and dives and turns. Doesn't go too insane, no corkscrews or anything of that nature. It has a smoothness to it, but you get that speed and that rush and that lovely one of the drops where you just like are floating in air as the vehicle drops is nice. It being in the dark with the wind, with the speed that you're hitting, it is intense and fun and creative, and there's also multiple versions of this ride. They have during the Star Wars season, they'll do a Hyperspace Mountain version where you're fighting in the middle of a space battle. During Halloween time, they'll do Ghost Galaxy where you're being chased by an evil ghost spirit through space. It is super fun. This is the ride that the most amount of times that I've gotten through a single loop of it, and they're like, you guys want to go again? And then they just send us through again. It is so much fun, so creative, so interesting. I love every aspect of it. 5 out of 5. Perfection. Food-wise, over in Tomorrowland, you have the Galactic Grill, which is burgers and fries, which are all just kind of okay. And you have the Alien Pizza Planet, where they got some really good pizzas, but it's a cafeteria style, so you just pick up what you want and stay away from the desserts, because Disney is not really great with desserts, especially in the cafeteria style restaurants. So yeah, that is my talking over the Disneyland parks. Hey everyone, Future Andrew here. So there was a couple things I forgot to mention when I went through this, recorded this the first time. First off, in Star Wars Land, there are 2 shops worth taking a look if you are a Star Wars fan. There is Savi's Workshop. Basically, you get to build and make your own custom lightsaber. It is quite expensive, but you get to choose all the pieces and you get to take it home with you. And the ceremony itself is pretty cool, but unless you're like a hardcore Star Wars fan, it's something that you can watch on YouTube, and you don't need to spend that kind of money on but if you're someone who, would love to have their own lightsaber, and is a big fan, it's good for that. There's also the Droid Depot, where you get to build your own R2-D2 droid, or BB-8. It's really fun, you get to pick some interesting pieces, but it's also a bit on the pricey side. It's really good if you have kids and they want to have their own kind of droid, and if you're a hardcore Star Wars fan, it's worth a look if you want your own little personal remote control droid. Daily, there is a parade up and down the middle of the park, starting from Main Street USA up to right beside It's a Small World. If you do plan to see the parade, I recommend trying to find a seat at least a half hour before the parade starts, because it gets very crowded very quickly. I'd also avoid looking in the Main Street area, because that is the spot that crowds up the most and you have the least amount of room to work with. So you'll have a hard time finding an actual seat. You'll usually end up standing. If you go further up there and go towards more It's a Small Worlds area, you have a better chance of finding a spot that you can actually sit down and enjoy watching the show. Down by the Rivers of America, they do a show nightly called Fantasmic. You're following Mickey Mouse on his journey through his dreams, where he runs into characters from all over the spectrum. It's like you got the Disney princesses, you have Jungle Book, you have Captain Jack Sparrow. It's a really great show, and I truly do love it, and the music that comes with it is excellent. The one negative I have with it right now is it just came back after a year hiatus, and the big finale of the show originally was Mickey Mouse fighting Maleficent, who turns into this big giant dragon, and now it's just Mickey Mouse fighting this woman on this really high pedestal that of Maleficent. Because last year the dragon caught fire and burnt down, and I was in the park when that happened. I wasn't watching the show. I was actually in one of the restaurants, and I was like, is the kitchen on fire? Why is there so much smoke? Turned out the dragon caught on fire. And this was their replacement for that, which that's really pathetic and cheap. And it's like they closed for a year. Like they took a year and they didn't do anything. Yeah, it is one of the big problems with the modern day Disney, unfortunately, is they keep taking the cheaper option for things. Like, I understand if they didn't want to rebuild the dragon for fear it would just catch fire again, but you couldn't find another kind of workaround, because, like, there are things you could have done without, actually doing a fire-breathing dragon, but they went with the cheapest option they could. There's also the fireworks that they do most nights. If it's during the peak season, summer, the holidays, they'll do a show every single night at around 9:30. If it's the off-season, they'll only do it on the weekends. There's a lot of great areas to view the fireworks from, but easily the best is going to be in front of the castle or over on Main Street, USA. If you're on Main Street, they do projections on the wall, so you get an extra element into the show. I'd also recommend watching it from the Rivers of America. They do projections on the water over there that work really well with the show. There's a lot of other places you can do it, but some of those can be closed depending on, the wind and stuff. And yeah, fireworks are always kind of iffy if they will go off or not, because all it takes is a little bit of wind at a high altitude and the show's just canceled. But yeah, that's stuff I forgot. See you guys later. So my top 5, the ones that I'm like, you should try and squeeze in if you've never been on them, that are worth waiting for, with trying to get onto. Number 1 would be Space Mountain. Number 2 would be Rise of the Resistance. Number 3 would be Pirates of the Caribbean. Number 4 would be the Haunted Mansion. And number 5, the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. I think each of those has something interesting, something worth it, something that makes it fun and interesting and creative to do. The ones that I would say to avoid, unless you really, really have to or want to, that are just, I don't think are really worth the time, would be Autopia, either of the riverboat rides, Tom Sawyer's Island, any of the walkthrough things, basically. Star Wars, The Journey Continues, The Canoe, and Peter Pan. But this has just been my thoughts on this. I do truly love these parks. I do think there's some great stuff in them. I do think the storytelling is a level above any other park in the world. This one, to me, is very much my home. I don't go as much as I would like to. I don't go as much as I could. My body doesn't like doing that much walking anymore, but I still enjoy it a lot. But what do you all think? Do you like some of these rides? Do you hate some of these rides? Is there anything that you have questions on about the park that I could help clarify, or maybe find someone who might know the answers better? You let me know in those comments below. Happy watching, happy park going. I will see you all next time. Bye!